Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second installment of the Talking Point webinar series. Here we'll examine the sustainable retail and its impact on the industry. If you're new here, hi, I'm Ali Thiam, the editor of Power Retail. It's lovely to have everyone here today. Our lineup today is absolutely blinding, but before I introduce all of our panelists, I have a little bit of housekeeping to go through. So if you have any questions for our panelists today, be sure to pop them in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen in the little tab, and we will try our best to answer them at the end of the session. Today, we are joined by Paul Roper, the Chief Commercial Officer at CouriersPlease, Michael Elias, the Co-founder and Managing Director of MANRAGS, and our very own Grant Arnott, the CEO of Power Retail. Lovely to have everyone here today. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, Ali. Ready to roll. Hot topic.
Sustainability is now no longer just a buzzword. It's become an integral part of our lives and an important factor for future-proofing our planet. And in today's webinar, we will be examining these factors that lead to focus on sustainability, the steps retailers can take to develop a more ethical and sustainable practice, the rise of conscious consumption, and how the pandemic has impacted consumer behavior and perceptions of sustainable retailing. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. I'm going to start with Paul. Paul, could you please take us through some of the findings from the recent CouriersPlease study?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ali. So we commissioned a survey with just over 1,000 consumers just to understand how they were thinking in terms of sustainability and ethical purchasing decisions that they were making. And yeah, it was some really interesting feedback from that survey. So we discovered that actually 41% of respondents would pay more for a product that was ethically sourced. This stat here, which is 46%, represents actually the percentage of shoppers under 30 that would be prepared to pay more for an ethically sourced, either green or sustainably sourced product, which was amazing. And what we found was there were sort of gender and age gaps between the survey results. So 46% under 30 would pay more, but when you got to the over 50s, it dropped to 34. And there were also gender gaps. So if you actually split the data between men and women, that we actually got an overall stat saying 46% of women would actually pay more, but only 36% of men would pay more for a sustainable or an ethically sourced product, which is kind of interesting. But I think the key thing here was for retailers, and we'll get onto this later, is that there is actually an opportunity to charge more for sustainable products, which is very interesting. If we go to the next slide, you will see that one of the other stats that came out was just an increased demand from consumers in terms of transparency of the products that are being sourced, or supply chain, or what the environmental impact of the retailers was, and quite an incredible result. 87% saying that they really were very interested in calling for increased transparency from retailers, and that was much higher than we anticipated. And interesting, again, some variations by state. So New South Wales topped the stats in terms of them being the 87%, but then it sort of was by state it dropped. So Queensland was 85%, ACT and the policymakers was as low as 68%, which I found kind of amusing, considering Canberra should be the ones driving this. But very interesting, and we really sort of took this as COVID informing a lot of this kind of rethinking about purchasing, and I think really it was a bit of a time out for people making making some more informed purchasing decisions and wanting to do things differently going forward. I think certainly we found that there were people making almost taking a moral obligation in terms of where they were spending their money and what they were prepared to spend their money on. And I certainly felt that myself as well. You know, as a consumer, I have a job. Thankfully, I've got money in my hand, but it's not just about buying stuff any longer. It's about I've got money that I can share with retailers and manufacturers that I support and whose values I support. And I think that number, was very strongly calling that out, which was very interesting. And I think, that there was a lot of sentiment around supporting local, supporting small, you know, and really keeping certain businesses, you know, trading and really rewarding retailers that have got, you know, some very robust, sustainable programs in place. So I think that was really telling. If you look at the last slide in the pack here, overall the summary was that, you know, 9 out of 10 Aussies would be more likely to purchase ethical and sustainable products if they could. And to the earlier point, 41% or 2 out of 5 would actually be prepared to pay more. So I think from our perspective, and I think for the retailers, you know, involved in this call or studying these stats, I think it's just really understanding that there's a changing sentiment from their consumers. And I think from a retailer's perspective, you need to really think about or carefully present or manage your green and sustainable program to make sure that you're aligned with those consumers, because there's a real risk going forward that retailers could alienate their natural consumer base if they don't start to sort of think and act the same way that their consumers are. And equally, you know, competitors coming in and stealing their base because they're more nimble and they're communicating in a much more effective way what their green credentials are. So I think the interesting thing about this is that, you know, the overall message here is that, you know, being green and sustainable is good for the planet, but it's also good for business. And it doesn't necessarily need to come at a cost. There's profits to be made here and doing the right thing. I know Michael will talk later about his 3 Ps, which I found fascinating, and about the way they conduct themselves. But it's really interesting to see, I think, retailers that have taken the high moral ground have made a big impact in terms of market share. I'll just, one customer who's a customer of CouriersPlease is Who Gives a Crap, who are selling toilet paper, if people don't know. But really fascinating story, because really what they've done is they've taken a consumable product that everyone needs, but they've differentiated their product, and they've basically created followers and fans and brand advocates for their product. So, you know, you now have a decision, okay, I need to buy toilet paper. Do I buy it from this sort of fat cat corporate, or do I buy it from this company who I know last year gave $5 million to sanitation projects in India and Africa, and they, you know, announced that they're going fully 100% carbon offset. So when you're left with that sort of choice, you know, then a lot of people are going to sway towards that product, and they've grown about 100% in the last year. And I can tell you their price point is not cheap. But basically, and I'm one of their consumers, I have to support my customers. You know, when I log on and buy a product from them, I'm not looking at the price point. I've already made a moral decision. I want to support them because my values are aligned with theirs. And I know I feel personally good when I've made that purchase, because I haven't just bought toilet paper. I've bought toilet paper, but I've also achieved some other personal goals, which is supporting programs that I believe in and a company that's actually giving back. And that makes me feel good as a consumer. And that just sort of drives that sort of virtuous circle. And I think people and retailers that have recognized this, this is the new sort of fighting ground, I think, in terms of developing, as I've said before, those sort of brand alliances, the brand advocates, and this whole rise of conscious consumerism. So I think that summary stat is really telling, and anyone that ignores that, I think, does so at their peril, because they're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of feeling good about yourself, it's also great to look good as well. And I think that MANRAGS pretty much knocks that one on their head there. So if Paul, Michael, you wanted to talk about your partnership and how you guys work together as well, go for it.
Yeah, I'll start initially and then hand over to Michael. So look, we were really looking for some partners in this space because we wanted to improve our green credentials and do the right thing by the planet. And we were aware of Michael's work in terms of recycling textiles and minimizing landfill and reducing emissions. And we thought this is just brilliant because we saw there was an opportunity to not just support that, but actually form part of the supply chain. So we've offered Michael and MANRAGS a contactless pickup service whereby anyone that wants to recycle their textiles, they can call CouriersPlease. We go to the door, we pick it up. There's no contact at all, and then we return those textiles to MANRAGS. So that was great because we just launched a product called Boomerang, which was a returns portal, and the timing was perfect. We spoke to Michael and he was interested. We were launching Boomerang. It seemed like a really good fit. And we also got the whole of our operations and staff behind it by having MANRAGS distinctive yellow collection bins in all of our depots across the country. So all of the drivers are recycling their uniforms and all the staff are recycling their textiles as well. And we've set an aspirational target, I think, to reduce about 500,000 kilos of carbon emissions by 2022. And yeah, that was really where we came in. I'll hand over to Michael to talk a bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think the relationship and building a relationship with CouriersPlease was a fairly easy decision to make. That a genuine, dedicated focus to sustainability and greenhouse gases. It's very easy for us to make a decision to partner up, and the partnership has grown to the point that we've got three that deliver to us 3 times a day. Each one of them has a key to our warehouse, so they just walk straight in and drop things off, and we couldn't be more trusting of the team there. For us, we've been in a bit of a journey, and as a retailer, we weren't always sustainable. Sustainability has been a journey that we've been on. So I'm not going to put my hand up and say we launched this thing with absolute sustainability in mind. For us, it was more so, for the last 4 years, we've been producing and selling, fantastic, product, socks and underwear all over the world, distributing to over 70 countries around the world. And early last year, something hit us and we go, what happens at the end of life of our product? And in Australia for socks, nothing happens, but they end up in the bin. So we launched our sock recycling program in late September last year, and within a couple of months, we diverted over 500,000 pairs of socks from going to landfill. 13,000 kilograms of textiles diverted in just socks. We then created our reuse, repurpose, and recycle model, which we pioneered to ensure that none of these socks would end up in landfill. And from there, the response has just been absolutely overwhelming. And I think there's some figures up on there, which I'll get to in a sec. But for us, the growth of that, we as a business which is focused on profits, everything has to be commercially viable. But what we decided to do is change our focus to go, we are going to apply the triple bottom line model to our business practices and everything we do. The triple bottom line looks at people, planet, and profit. So no decisions are made without people coming first. No decisions are made that are not right for the planet, and of course they need to be profitable and commercially viable. And ever since launching our sock recycling, we've seen significant growth in customers. So and then from there, in April this year, at the start of the pandemic, we were set to launch our sock recycling in the States, and that didn't happen. Lucky no one made their way there. But instead, we launched our total textile recycling collection offering with CouriersPlease as a partner in the logistics side of things, and the results have been outstanding. So just speaking of retail and sustainability and the impact, some key numbers which aren't up on the screen is we've experienced 400% growth in 6 months compared to our 4-year history. We've seen our sales grow by 220% day on day. it's comparable to the same time last year. Most importantly is we've seen that customers and Australian consumers who are recycling with us, 50% of them are advocating for our brand and coming back and purchasing our product. And that for me is absolute demonstration that sustainability does equal success, and sustainability absolute place in retail. So, we've got these people who are recycling with us. We're trying to be as, we are being as transparent as possible. We're forming relationships that, are creating reuse, repurpose, and recycling opportunities for every piece of clothing that lands, and that lands here at our collection depots. And we've created some really cool and really exciting partnerships there. For example, no denim that we ever collect will end up being recycled. So if it's good for reuse, it goes to our charity partners, which we have an open door policy for. And if it's not, good for reuse, we're working with the likes of KitX and Homey to release a reconstituted denim line. And that in itself, those opportunities, that demonstrates success. And those opportunities are forming flow-on opportunities. And we've now got brands saying, can we integrate your textile recycling offering into our community? Because one, it's the right thing to do to take responsibility. But a flow-on from that is it's creating revenues. And I mean, that's as a brand, as a business, that's something that everyone wants. So I'm really excited. The numbers up on the screen, we've received almost 100,000 kilos of textiles in the last 6 months. I reckon 2 weeks away from hitting 1 million pieces of clothing that we've received, and that's really exciting. Considering that 60% of the textiles that we receive are fit for reuse, and that they become, they go into reuse here in Australia. I'm really proud of that. Some of that product is going to profit for purpose. Charities such as Save the Children, Sacred Heart Mission, Ready Set. There's a number of charities which are taking this stuff, and homeless shelters that are, and we're making an impact there. That these textiles would have otherwise ended up in the bin. And the flow-on effects from that is 400,000 kilograms of greenhouse gases prevented from hitting the air that we breathe. So every little step is making a difference. And sustainability, it's not just about doing things like this. It comes down to packaging and everything that we're doing. And like I said, we're very proud of what we've achieved. There's all that we can do. And I think that the fact that we're seeing the actions that we're taking result in better business, that's encouraging for us and other brands and businesses out there to go, this is the path that we need to take. So really excited that we kind of jumped on this journey and really expedited our journey last year, and really excited for what comes next.
Oh, absolutely. I know that I'll be going to MANRAGS for some Christmas shopping this year. Definitely buy the men in my life some socks, so I'm excited.
We might just have an opportunity to experience the world's first recycled cotton socks.
And it's the best thing. I'm really excited about it. Now I'm going to take us to Grant now. So the benchmarking survey has given us some really interesting insights surrounding the rise of ethical and conscious consumption. So Grant, could you please go through some of the key takeaways that you found from this report?
Yeah, sure will, Ali. And look, fascinating story, Michael, too. Just want to say congratulations and real validation of the triple bottom line approach, and great to be partnering with CouriersPlease. But to hear that story and the success on all three measures is fantastic to hear. So a great example, and good news for everyone else trying to have a crack at it. All right, so what we did here, so as Ali mentioned, this is a survey from Power Retail. So we are canvassing our database of over 1 million consumers every 2 weeks, and we pick a particular topic that we want to focus on. And this is very recent, so this was conducted on September 18 with well over a few thousand responses to this survey. So I point that out because sometimes these data points are pre-COVID, and people could assume that, okay, maybe there's less concern about the environment. In the current pandemic, it hasn't been as topical as it was, say, a year ago when there was a bit more clean air. Pardon the pun, but yeah, this is very recent data and still shows how important the sustainability element is for consumers when they're looking at retailers that they want to purchase from. So the question there is pretty self-evident. When purchasing online, which of the following sustainability and/or ethical practices do you find appealing in a retailer? So overwhelmingly, it's the environmental component, so the recyclable packaging, clearly top of the list there by a fair way. No animal cruelty, no animal testing feature heavily as well, and transparency about the origins of products is also important, so that provenance piece and how they're ethically sourced. Further down the line is no single-use plastic, but I think, yeah, overwhelmingly it is about recyclables. People want to know, as they're doing more online shopping, that the effort is going into recycling. Then the big question that every retailer wants to know, would you be, oh, sorry, Ellie, if we can just.
Sorry, okay.
Not quite done with this one yet. Would you be willing to pay more when purchasing online if a retailer offers any of the following? So again, at the top of the list there, significantly in favour of things like recyclable packaging, no animal cruelty, no animal testing. But yeah, sadly down the bottom there, you've got that 43% who are saying they wouldn't purchase or wouldn't pay more. But the converse of that is 57% are saying that they would. So whilst that's a big number, 43% saying they wouldn't, it's actually showing, if you follow it through, that the majority will be prepared to pay more for the right products. And I think that trend is just going to go up. So we did this survey again last year. So effectively, if you map this out over time, you are going to see, like Michael's business is experiencing now, and like CouriersPlease, as data was showing as well, the consumers are increasingly going to be prepared to pay more for the clear conscience of knowing that they're doing something that's actually helping the environment and supporting a retailer that puts that first before just bottom line. Now you can move on. So yeah, this one's really interesting. So we asked the qualitative question, when buying a product from a retailer that advertises that they adhere to sustainability and ethical practices, how do you feel, basically? So 41% are saying that they feel great when purchasing from responsible retailers. They feel happiness before and after the purchase. So they're feeling that sense of accomplishment after buying from sustainable and ethical retailers. Again, it's that clearer conscience. It was really interesting hearing Paul's views earlier, or data earlier, around the age demographic as well. Obviously, much more resonant with the over 30s, who are very, very conscious about who they're buying from and their ethical practices. We hope that that will filter through to some of the older demographics. But yeah, it's that you want to feel good, you want to feel like you're collecting some good karma points by purchasing from these retailers, and that's what our data is showing. So it's making people feel good, and again, sounds like MANRAGS are benefiting from that, and so is the environment. Next one. Yeah, so a big influence, so sustainability practices and policies part of a retailer are significantly influencing decision making. So nearly half of shoppers say that one of their purchases has been influenced by sustainable ethical practices in the last 6 months. That's across all demographics. And then, as we pointed out, younger shoppers are much more likely to be influenced. 56% of shoppers aged 18 to 24 saying a purchase has been influenced by sustainable ethical practices in the last 6 months. So the real obvious thing here, and I know we're likely preaching to a lot of the converted on this particular webinar, but the message that's got to get out to all businesses is that this is not something you can ignore and hope will pass. Certainly the genie is out of the bottle when it comes to sustainability. Consumers are wanting it. That's not going to go back in the bottle. They're not going to suddenly take a backward step and say, you know what, we've actually stopped. This is actually not as important to us anymore. It's only going to get more and more important, and retailers have to get used to that fact, can't stick their head in the sand and pretend that it's going to pass. It's got to be a core component of your marketing and retail strategy going forward, and the whole business approach.
Definitely. And just
So
on
we can
that,
move on, Ali.
yeah, just talking about the retailers that are,
Sure.
are making a difference, I think it's very important to celebrate those that are actually taking steps to become more sustainable and ethical in their practices. So Grant, if you wanted to just discuss and let the audience know about the Power Retail Sustainability Index.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. So this is something Ali and I particularly been working on, and also with the a group called the Purpose Agents. So they've helped us put together sustainability. So we, knew we wanted to do something to really highlight sustainable practices, not the business model attached to it, but just the right thing to do, and really start to highlight and recognise retailers who are investing appropriately in their sustainability practices, call attention to that, but to it from the consumer perspective as well, so they know and can develop the retailers who are adopting sustainability practices. So the list hasn't been published yet; it's still in motion, and we're accepting submissions now. Michael, if you haven't jumped onto it already, definitely one for you, because I think from what you've said, it'll be a great thing to do. But yeah, we're inviting all retailers to enter their submissions. As I say, we've worked with the Purpose Agents. It's a really robust structure. It is based on the triple bottom line principles. And yeah, we're very excited about that, and also very open to feedback because it's a new initiative, and we want to get it right. And yeah, definitely keen to work with industry on developing this over the coming years. But there's no turning back. As I say, the genie is well and truly out of the bottle. It's something that's very important to us, but very important, we think, to the industry at large, and clearly to consumers from what we're seeing today. So it's something we're excited to move forward with.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's just been really great, and I can't wait to see how everything develops and some of the great retailers that are making a real difference. So we're really running out of time, but I just wanted to touch on a few of the talking points that we're going to be discussing today. So COVID has changed the way that consumers and retailers operate and understand the industry completely. So I'm going to open this to the group. How has the pandemic impacted consumers' perception of sustainable retailing? Paul, let's start with you.
Yeah, look, I think very much so, and much the same as Michael. We found that adopting a green approach has really worked well for us. I mean, we certainly we've taken on, for example, a carbon offset program. So we've worked with the Carbon Reduction Institute to become a carbon neutral operator. So our operation is carbon neutral. We're probably 25% carbon neutral on our fleet, and we have an aspirational target to be fully carbon neutral across the business by 2025. But really, again, to Michael's point, it's good for business, right? We are actively promoting that through social media in particular. And again, this is a younger sort of demographic communication channel that's resonating with our base. The customers that we're talking to really like what we're doing. It's become such an important part of our presentation material to our customers that we have almost an equal section on sustainability and community projects as we do in terms of what the operation does. And again, to Grant's previous slide in terms of sentiment, purchasing is often a very emotional thing. You have a lot of choices to make, and we want people to feel good about partnering with CouriersPlease, knowing that the courier driver delivering is part of a carbon reduction program, and that our values are the same as their values, and that's good for us in terms of us gaining market share. So I definitely think, to Grant's point, he said the genie's out of the bottle. It's true. So there's no looking back now. I think this whole COVID situation has created a bit of a crossroads where we're thinking differently. We're saying, okay, well, a lot of the factors around that is social, economic, environmental. Let's make some better decisions going forward. And I think you can see what's happening to Michael's business since he's decided to embark upon that plan. I'm sure there are many other sock companies, no disrespect, sock companies out there, but everyone's talking about MANRAGS and MANRAGS socks, right? So it's been very effective. So yeah, I definitely think it's a key thing going forward.
Definitely. And Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, look, I think a couple of things, just to add, what's happened over the pandemic. A lot of people have had a lot of time, a lot more time, and on their hands, and literally on their hands, on their phones, in their hands. And so we've treated it as opportunistic to raise awareness, create, generate, highlight, key educational pieces around impacts, and people have sat back, and I think there's a silver lining to the pandemic. We sit back and you can kind of go, you can see mountains you've never seen before. You can see through the Venice, the water in Venice, and so these things have gone. These have raised awareness to people to go, shit, environmental focus, and stepping back and more conscious consumption. This is having a very, very positive effect. And so for us, it's been about increasing awareness, educating as much as we can around issues during this time. One point I'll make though, and it's quite interesting for us, is I think both Paul and Grant have spoken about demographics and age. We're seeing significant interest in our textile recycling at an older age bracket as well. Unfortunately, sometimes it's because of deceased estate and whatever else. But these are also people that have had a lifetime of clothes and textiles. And the truth is that they, and it's been our focus, and for a while now, that what's the reason we're doing this is it's not for us. We'll be gone one day, but we want to hand this over to the next generation. We want to hand over what we're fortunate to have, and maybe something better, not a burnt out waste landfill country. And so we're finding that the older demographic is more conscious of this now, because they actually care for the next generation. So it's quite interesting to see. Yes, absolutely, under 30, up until 40, that's a key focus area, and they're a lot more aware and conscious of what's going on. I think the cool word is woke. But at the older bracket, there's definitely greater awareness coming through there as well, and they're starting to make some real changes to the way they do things as well.
Absolutely. And Grant, do you have anything to add to that about the pandemic and its impact on sustainable retail?
Oh, look, probably, a lot of it just echoing what Michael said then, but I think, yeah, it'll be fascinating to see what happens coming out, emerging from the pandemic, but back into, a chaotic world with traffic and with people everywhere, and with industry getting back to full strength. Because I think, what Michael said is right. People have come to appreciate clear skies and smelling the flowers. They've had time to think about. That's going to be back to chaos and the rat race. I think this will be even more exacerbated in terms of people's strong desire to support sustainable practices. And I think it's both not only an opportunity for businesses, but it's just a must. It's a must that you have to approach this and get onto it now and do it the right way. And as this case study we've seen today with MANRAGS shows, you can actually tick both boxes.
Definitely. And obviously in the last 8 months, we've seen a huge increase in online shopping and its popularity, and it doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So with this increased interest in e-commerce also comes the increase in production and consumption, which is obviously detrimental to our planet. So what are some steps that retailers can take to develop a more ethical and sustainable practice? Again, I'm going to start off with Paul.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas is packaging, because you often see, particularly in the transport industry, people that are overpacking, and then and even as a consumer, receiving packages from retailers and go, oh my God, like you get to it's like pass the parcel. You get through 4 or 5 layers of packaging, and then you've got a widget in the middle, right? And you're thinking, well, that's just a waste. So Michael and I have talked about even partnering with one of our other customers that has large 25 kilo boxes, and can we use their boxes to recycle his product and bring it back, so we kind of get a win-win-win. I think there's more opportunities there. We're looking at stuff like, can we get biodegradable shrink wrap, for example, that's fit for purpose but also doesn't create landfill. So I think packaging is probably one of the easiest things, I think, to look at, because there's two aspects to it. One is the waste of the packaging itself. Two is actually the carbon offset footprint, because the larger the package, the larger the carbon footprint. If you think about air freight, for example, you can have a very lightweight package that could weigh half a kilo, but if it's packaged in a box that's 10 kilos, that's your carbon footprint, right? So I think having smaller, less bulky, and potentially recyclable packaging. There was an article I was reading the other day from Starbucks, for example, incentivizing customers to bring their own Starbucks mugs back in, rather than creating extra packaging, single-use packaging, which is very clever, because of course then they've got them hooked into a recycle. They're recycling and going in every day now, and they're creating sort of brand fans and dedicated customers and return business. So I think packaging is certainly key, I think, in retail. And of course, look, making green procurement decisions. Every organization has consumables that they buy for their business. And if you're smart, you can find green choices often with the suppliers and the vendors you're working with. And we're certainly doing that internally with our procurement manager, and I think that's something I'd encourage other retailers to consider.
Definitely. Michael and Grant, do you have anything to add to that? Any other ways that retailers can develop more ethical or sustainable practices?
Look, I mean, packaging is 100%, and I think, just on the numbers that Grant showed earlier, there's no doubt that that's there, a key opportunity. There's also no doubt that they're actually already seeing the result of that. I think I read something yesterday around Mr. Pratt and Visy having their best quarter ever, driven by the increase in recycled cardboard and Visy Industries as a whole. So that's definitely there. I think the other one, and just kind of what you're seeing from the changing landscape with e-commerce, is just the ability to forecast better, to reduce overproduction. That's a big one for us. We fortunately for us, as having originally been born as a subscription brand, it meant that we could forecast, in advance. We could almost bring and produce and manufacture to the exact number of stock that we were going to sell 3 months in advance. And I think because more is moving online, the greater focus on analysis and the greater tools available, integrated technology and all that kind of stuff, when forecasting and production, that's where we're going to see in the down the track as well. And no doubt a greater focus on that. Yeah, I think that's a big one that I think we'll see a little bit more of as well.
Definitely. And Grant, do you have anything to add to that?
Look, not too much. There is a lot of great literature out there, Ali, around sustainable practices, and again, the purpose agents. There's consultants out there that specialise in this sort of thing that can help people along the journey. But yeah, all that's been said has been very relevant.
Definitely. I did just want to mention one last thing. The other day, Paul, you mentioned Australian made and local products, how a lot of consumers are buying more local to support Australian businesses, especially during this year. How is this influence for Australian made products impacting sustainable retailing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly, if you look at the rise of domestic deliveries, and CouriersPlease as an example, seen like 100% growth year on year. It's been huge. And then conversely, looking at some of the international transporters, where either the airlines, the commercial airlines aren't there, so there's no belly space there, the freighters are not flying. And you can see very much that there's a massive development of logistics and supply chain requirements locally and domestically, which thankfully CouriersPlease is well placed to serve. We're a B2C specialist, but I think that's what I'm seeing really is that there is an appetite to support local companies like MANRAGS and say, look, I need to buy something, but if I can buy it locally and keep jobs here and protect local businesses, I'll do that. And that's a conscious decision I can make because I can spend my money anywhere. I was jokingly saying to you, Ali, the other day that I think our menu log bill had tripled during COVID, right? Purposely because our family was saying, I want these restaurants to get through this. And we only ordered normally once a week. We're ordering 3 times a week because we wanted to push some money back out to restaurants to keep them in business. My gym subscription, God help me, I put on 6 kilos during COVID since it's closed down. But they struck a deal with me and said, look, if you keep paying 50% of your subscription, will you do that? And we'll give you 50% on the other side. And I've agreed to do that because I want them to survive on the other side. So I think there's a lot of sort of transactional support for local business, support the high street. You know, no one wants to see police signs in their local high street. So I think what we've been able to support is this sort of groundswell of opportunity where you know, a retailer can say, okay, well, I can't open my door today, but I could get someone like a CouriersPlease to pick up my product. If I position myself, I can keep retail money coming through the door to survive this. And so for us, it's been great to see, you know, some of the new partnerships we've driven. So I definitely have seen, you know, a huge domestic groundswell of support for local businesses.
Absolutely.
I definitely think the sentiment is right. That's what our data shows too. We did an Australian-made piece, and it's along the same lines. That's that sentiment towards, you know, that COVID has helped drive, but the sentiment towards, okay, do the right thing by businesses has changed, hopefully forever. You know, it's been quite an interesting transformation.
I think the challenges for retail, you know, in the export manufacturing industry over the last 9 months have, you know, I mean, even for us, where some of our products are produced overseas, it's raised the alarm bells to kind of go, what's your BCP around, you know, issues with logistics and moving things around the world, which there has been. So I think that's probably, you know, automatically going to drive some of that. I think, you know, to kind of jump away, I think there's a need though to kind of go, yes, we want more Australian made, but that requires investment, and it requires investment from, you know, top down. So whilst, you know, it's very easy to have this conversation and absolutely, you know, we should be doing more domestically. You know, that doesn't just, you can't just flick a switch on. It takes, you know, it takes some planning and investment to kind of make that happen. So, you know, hopefully the, you know, this triggers, you know, from federal government all the way down to, you know, invest and, you know, raise the bar on kind of domestic, you know, manufacturing and production and Australian made, because who wouldn't want to jump on that and save themselves the, you know, 45-day, you know, shipping times and, you know, everything that comes with that. So there's great opportunity to do it.
Definitely. Unfortunately, we have actually just run out of time. I think that we could have chatted for another hour and a half because there's so much we could get through. I just wanted to thank everyone who has taken the time out to be here, and for all the panelists. Again, it's just been fantastic insights and so much information that my head is just going to explode. So it's good stuff. So if we didn't get time to answer your questions today, I'm really sorry, but please feel free to reach out to the panelists at the end of the webinar. And once again, thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to Grant, to Michael, and to Paul for their time. So I want everyone to stay safe, and see you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Thanks, Ali.
Thanks, Ali.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, everyone.